Hi there, Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on EWTN Radio. With Debbie Georgiani, I am Jerry Usher. Yeah, a lot of people talking about things this time of year and on this day in particular, like what are you going out dressed up as? You going to a Halloween party, people showing up at work in costumes, kids getting ready to trick or treat. And a lot of us have on our minds the thought, the possibility that, there may be some dangerous stuff, around this time of year. Of course, we see that all the time. We're always kind of being watched by the evil ones and so forth. Not a need to be afraid or anything, but it does kind of bring these things to mind. And so, Debbie, we wanted to have a conversation about this with someone who really, really knows this kind of stuff.
We did, and we do, and so we're so glad we got him because Adam Blai is with us today, and he's been with us on previous shows. He's a religious demonologist out of the Diocese of Pittsburgh. And Jerry, you'll do the formal introduction, but I just wanted to make sure our listeners know that they can call in and ask Adam questions around this holiday. And I mean, do you call it a holiday? I mean, whatever it is, and how we should view it as Catholic Christians. But we wanted Adam to give us his expert opinion on this and what we should be looking for, what we should guard ourselves against. So it's important. And phone lines are already lighting up. That means you have a lot to say about this. We've got questions already lined up for Adam as well. So here's the number, 1-833-288-EWTN. That's 833-288-3986.
Yeah, this time of year, like I said, in a particular way, like I said, there's evil around us all the time, and we just need to be aware that it's there. We don't need to be hiding or running or anything. We are protected by our baptism and the sacraments. But this time of year, we talk about Halloween in particular. There are some things going on, things done, by like maybe witch groups or something, and you just want to have the sort of the know-how and the skinny on this with your kids, especially if they want to go trick or treating. What do you let them dress up as and things like that. So Adam Blai has indeed joined us, as Debbie said. He is a religious demonologist with a Master's of Science from Penn State University in Adult Clinical Psychology, and he has done psychological work in community and forensic settings. Adam is a peritus, or an expert on religious demonology and exorcism for the Roman Catholic Church. He actually trains exorcists in exorcism on a national level, and I could say so much more. He is a speaker. He goes out and gives talks at conferences and parish missions and so forth. We'll tell you more about that during the program. But Adam, it's good to have you back with us on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Welcome.
Thank you, Jerry. It's nice to be here. Hi, Debbie.
Hi, Adam. Thank you so much. I know you're super busy in your diocese in Pittsburgh doing the work that you do there, but you made time for this global platform to help us all on this Halloween day. And so, Adam, I don't know where we should begin. I mean, let me give the number real quickly if you want to call in and ask Adam a question, 833-288-3986. But let me just ask you this, Adam, real quickly before you get started on this. We've had a lot of our listeners email in and share that their kids and grandkids are dressing up in saints' costumes and stuff like that. And it's also, they felt it's a great way maybe to evangelize, to be out there, to show, that we are Christian, not to run from it, not to be in fear of it. And I'm just curious, Adam, just so I can kind of take that off of my notebook here. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I would say that I would take kind of a common sense approach to it. I wouldn't be overly worked up or overly fearful about Halloween at all. To some people it means a lot. To other people it doesn't mean a whole lot. I think with a lot of these cultural issues, like movies, like costumes, it's how we engage with them. It's not so much, to kind of be fundamentalist and say, well, this is evil because of some historical moment and therefore it needs to be absolutely rejected. I think there's some people that engage in it in a bad, negative way, and there's other people that it's just a social tradition. And then there's other people that try to use it for good, in evangelization. So it's kind of how we engage with things, I think, is a more reasonable approach to it. I wouldn't be fundamentalist one way or the other about it. But that being said, sure, if you look at it as just a social tradition of a time for kids to dress up and go around their community, well, sure, you could celebrate what you're interested in. You could kids dress up as superheroes that they like, that maybe they saw in a movie or in a comic book and they identify with, and our ideas about heroes being cool and, helping the community or helping people. And then some people dress up as Catholic or Christian heroes, the saints that they might like that they read a story about. So I wouldn't stop a kid from dressing up as a saint to celebrate them that maybe they like or like some story about that saint's life. It's part of being human, and it's part of living as a Christian. You share your story with the community at large, and that's done in various ways. So, yeah, I think a costume can even be a little way to evangelize.
Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on this Halloween day, and we have Adam Blai with us. He is a religious demonologist. He is employed full-time by the Diocese of Pittsburgh, and as we said before, he helps to train priests on the church's rite of exorcism, has participated in many himself, and also gives talks to priests and deacons and even lay people just on spiritual realities, things that we need to know about, but just, like we say, not be too fearful or paranoid about. But we want to talk with you and have your calls today, and we're going to get into things more than just Halloween. We can talk about many of the trends that are going around for young people, like certain games that they play and some of the dangers that they have and dabbling in spiritual things that maybe they shouldn't. So if you've got a child or children and you're concerned about that, maybe you've seen them doing some of these things, hearing about these games, and you're going, wow, not really sure about that. Adam doesn't know about everything, but he may have heard about it. So 833-288-3986. Just real quickly, Adam, one more thing on Halloween. We do know, I think it's a reality pretty well known that that there are people in the world who like consecrate themselves to Satan and to the devil, witch covens and all of this stuff. Is a day like Halloween, is that any kind of a day that they kind of look to maybe be a little bit more active or engaged in their practice?
Some of these groups, yes. There's not one consistent calendar of days that are important across all of these groups. But generally, yes, Halloween is something that is, quote unquote, celebrated or considered important by a lot of groups because it's a time that they see as celebrating, the dead or spirits.
Very good. Adam Blai, Jerry Usher, Debbie Georgiani. We're going to take your calls. The lines are full. Not a surprise there. But please jot the number down, 833-288-3986. It's Halloween. We're talking with demonologist Adam Blai.
This is Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, and we have a guest today, which we normally don't have many guests on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, but we have Adam Blai with us. He's a religious demonologist out of the Diocese of Pittsburgh, and he's helping us navigate through this day today, and even in our faith life. We started it on Halloween because we're talking obviously about different things that surround Halloween and what that means for all of us. So I just want to quickly quickly share this. Malvern Tent Revival 2018, Saturday, 1 p.m. Eastern Time on EWTN Radio Classics. John Benkovic Williams expresses the importance of receiving and cooperating with the graces given by a God of intention. So the Malvern Tent Revival 2018, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Don't forget to just check that out. So Adam, back to you. You wanted to continue on. I know we had to have just hit that little pause button, but there's we obviously wanted to have you on because Halloween is a big subject for us, but this relates to everything that we encounter with our faith life. So that we just felt that you would just give us that common sense approach that can really help us navigate through these things.
Yeah, and I would say for the Catholics, and really anybody that's interested in the history of this, it's important to remember that Halloween really emerged out of All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day, which was, the 2 days that sit right next to each other in the Catholic calendar, that the Church has always kind of celebrated a day where we pray for the poor souls in purgatory and we remember them, and we offer prayers for them to speed their time in purgatory. And then the next day we celebrate those souls of people that are now with God in heaven in the beatific vision. And this really is the foundation of these days, as opposed to necessarily focusing on, this is Halloween and the bad, people that like, the devil or are doing these bad things. Don't think of it as like, this is their day and they're celebrating, so we need to be fearful. This is all about free will, and this first and foremost was Catholic days to celebrate the poor souls and the Church triumphant, the saints in heaven. So I wouldn't, instead of kind of reacting and thinking like, how do we, brace ourselves against this evil day, I would think of it more as look at the origin of this day and celebrate, the saints and teach your kids about praying for the poor souls. Tell your kids stories about some of the saints. Go back to the origin of the day, because evil tries to, the devil's not a creative creature. So the devil can only look at what God does and try to ruin it or try to do a broken version of that. And when we focus too much on Halloween, that's really what we're kind of buying into. So instead of focusing on the poor souls and the saints, we're focusing on the devil and being fearful. And that's exactly what the devil wants, is to take the focus off of God and the focus off of the Church and make us sit there and be scared. And so I think the best way to combat that is to change that perspective.
We're going to go to your calls here for Adam Blai, a religious demonologist, works full-time with the Diocese of Pittsburgh. But also, Adam, you have been more and more in demand as far as a speaker. I know you train priests, and you do that sort of on an official level, but parishes and conferences, parish missions and things like that are having you out more and more to address spiritual subjects. So I'm just in the interest of full disclosure, Adam is managed by my company, Third Millennium Media. But Adam, talk about what you would like to say to the public, or what kinds of events and topics you like to talk about.
Well, first off, as you know, I work full-time for the Church and have a lot of responsibilities. So the speaking, I can't do a whole lot of it, but yeah, there's been a lot of interest. Sometimes it's with parishes where a community might want to get educated on the real background behind these things, and particularly on staying safe and kind of educating the youth, because there's not a lot of catechesis these days about the spiritual dangers, and really they boil down to First Commandment violations. And so some people are finding that useful. I'm getting a lot of requests from the Protestant world lately to educate them on how we understand all of this. They're looking to us to get our perspective on it, I think, because there's a sense that the Catholics do a lot of dealing with this, and of course people see the movies and they associate us with exorcism, but so I'm getting a lot of requests there. And what's the most important to me, of course, and what I yearn for and hope for is the opportunities to go to dioceses and help train priests or be useful to the Church in that way. So sometimes bishops or different dioceses will ask for that assistance, and Bishop Zubik has always been great about approving, helping other dioceses. So that's the most important part of the work.
That's very interesting about the Protestants having an interest in that and wanting the Catholic view on it. That's very interesting. Okay, so let's go to the phones for Adam Blai. First up is, I hope I have your name right. If I don't, please correct me. Polo in Midland, Texas, on Guadalupe Radio Network. Polo, welcome.
Yes, ma'am. That's me.
Okay. Well,
Anyway,
Adam Blai, good. Adam Blai's waiting for you.
Yes. Last year we were doing a job. Anyway, it was on Halloween day, and there's a bunch of trees. So we're surrounded by a bunch of trees. Anyway, there was a lady completely dressed in black. She had a black veil and all that. We didn't know if she was lost or what she was up to. And she was real close to our job site, so we asked her if we could help her. She told us she was just blessing the trees and that she belonged to she didn't say witch. She said a Wicca religion, something like that. And we have no idea what that is, and that's what I was asking, what Wicca is.
Adam?
Yeah. So Wicca's very, very popular these days. It essentially it's kind of like a nature worship version of what a lot of people would call witchcraft, and in fact, a lot of Wiccans would refer to themselves as witches. It really, if you look at the history of it, is a system of magic and nature worship that was basically written by a guy in England in the 70s. And he had read a lot of older books, more from the Middle Ages and other periods of time, and kind of cobbled together a combination of older, what we would, from a Catholic perspective, we would call, pagan worship practices. And this got very popular, and so now actually, this kind of, it's not so much a formal religion with churches, but in terms of being a system that people identify with as their religion, it's actually growing quite a bit in the United States. So it's kind of a mix between what we would think of as classic witchcraft, which is using magic to get your will, and nature worship. It's kind of a combination of those two.
What do you think, Polo? Does that to get at what you were asking?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
I was just
very good.
curious.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, good place to come with Adam Blai here on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. Talking about spiritual matters. St. Paul writes that our battle is not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers. And I really, really want to encourage you parents to call in. Adam, if parents don't call and ask about, I'm going to ask you, maybe Debbie and I will in a few minutes, about some of the trends and games and just the things that are going around that kids get involved in. They probably have no idea of the spiritual dangers of those. So we'll leave that to the parents here first. If you want to call 833-288-3986, but we will get to it indeed. And we're going to get to Camille next, listening to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie on Real Presence Radio in Fargo, North Dakota. And let's go to, there we go. We got Camille on the air. Hi, Camille. Welcome.
Hi, thank you. I just want to hear some recommendations for Catholic strategies or prayers for protection against the influence of Satan when you feel that somebody is being influenced that way.
Okay. So there's a few aspects to that. First off, the fundamental thing you need to understand is when it comes to influence, the free will is really important. So if another person you feel is influenced, we don't have full authority over other people, so we can't kind of pray and force them to not be interested in something or behave the way we want them to behave. So we can pray for them to receive the grace to maybe understand something more deeply or better, or to get out of something that they're into that we think is problematic, but we certainly don't want to be trying to force our wills on other people. The other thing is we have to understand also that the devil, his ordinary activity is temptation, and that's something that we all deal with from cradle to grave, and it's what God allows. The devil's on a leash, and God has the leash. Everything he does, he has to get permission, just like in the book of Job. And temptation is something that he's allowed to do our whole lives. So we can never kind of pray to the point where somebody's not tempted to be influenced by the devil. We're all influenced by the devil. We're all tempted to sin, and that's just part of life. The stuff we deal with in my work is the more extraordinary end of things. So that's kind of the foundation ideas. And then when it comes to, praying for somebody else, just pray in whatever way you pray. I think there can be a danger in getting wrapped up in this idea that, if I find this one set of words, that prayer will be powerful and I'll get the influence I want over a person or a situation. And prayer is a living relationship between us and God. It's not about, I need to find the special prayer and then suddenly I'll be able to do what I want in my prayer life. That's more of a magician thinking. If I find the right book with the right words in it, then I'll get what I want. And that's a dangerous way to approach prayer because you're approaching it like a magician, where you're saying, like, if I find the right magic words, I'll get the outcome that I want. And prayer is more of a living relationship with God. So just offer your prayers for this person in a loving way, in whatever way you feel comfortable. If you want to say a rosary for them, if that's the way you're drawn to prayer, if you want to use the St. Michael prayer, if you want to offer Mass intentions when you go to Mass, if you want to do all the above, if you want to have a Mass said for them, that's the most powerful prayer, in the sense that the Mass for a Catholic, that a priest offering the Mass is the most powerful prayer the Church has. And so, in that kind of sense, you could have Mass intentions for that person. But in terms of your personal prayer, I wouldn't get wrapped up in which prayer you're saying, but I would just be heartfelt and sincere in the prayers that you're using for them.
How's that, Camille? Does that work?
Yep, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Adam, that was really great. And also, too, Adam, I just want to say at the start of the show, I shared with you that I had a whole page in my notebook about dressing up as saints and as religious heroes in the Catholic Church to be out there to participate in Halloween. And I already got emails back and text messages back saying thank you to Adam because their kids are dressing up as saints. And so they just felt they loved your common sense approach to it. So it really put their mind and heart at ease, Adam. So I just wanted to thank you on behalf of our listeners that texted in, and they were waiting for me to ask that question because they were getting ready to get their kids ready for today.
Sure.
So, okay. So next up is John, and John is in San Antonio, Texas, also on Guadalupe Radio Network. Hi, John. Welcome to Take Two with Jerry and Debbie and our guest, Adam Blai.
Thank you. My question is, I recently came across in a book entitled Satan, an old book, The Exorcism of Jean Frey. I think she was a nun in the 1500s. And my question is, how would it be that a nun would be possessed by not just one demon, but multiple demons? I'll hang up now and just listen in.
Okay. Adam?
Okay. It's a little bit of an advanced question, but basically the fundamental thing to understand is we have free will, and because God loves us, He allows us to use our free will, and we can choose good or bad in our lives all the time. We're not robots, and He doesn't force us to not sin or not choose evil in some cases. And when we choose to break the first commandment in a pretty dramatic way, which is what black magic really is, you're turning to a spirit other than God for comfort, information, or power, and you're looking to get your will done. And when you do that, you're breaking the first commandment. You're telling God, I'm not going to wait on you, I don't trust you, I don't love you, I'm going to turn to this other spirit and cut a deal for what I want. And if we choose to do that, God basically allows us to do it. He allows us to use our free will, and then He allows a certain amount of the consequences for that, not because He's angry with us and wants us to suffer, but He wants us to see the reality of what we've just invited into our life, what we've just said, I want to be friends with this spirit over here. He wants us, like a parent watching their kid maybe, play around with something dangerous in life, or they're considering doing something that isn't good for them, and the parent might let them realize that this isn't good. And, so many times, and I think we all know this, our parents or our authority figures tell us you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, and what do? We all go out and we all have to learn the hard way.
We all do it.
until we experience it, we don't really get it, we don't really believe it. So unfortunately, that's part of human nature. So God sometimes lets us learn the hard way that isn't your friend. I love you, I'm your father, I created you, but I'm going to let you burn your hand on the stove and realize the stove is hot. You shouldn't do that. And that's why some people, even nuns and religious, if they stumble and they get seduced, they too can be in trouble.
All right. Adam Blai with us on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie, our Halloween broadcast. More of your calls. Valerie, Debbie, Kelly, and the others. You are coming straight ahead. Stay with us, everyone.
Back with Adam Blai on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie. And Jerry, you're going to have to help me out here because my screen just froze up, so I'm not quite sure who we're going to go to next. So
Okay, well, we got a lot of calls. Just wanted to get to a quick question from
okay, good.
from Marianne in Syracuse, New York. Marianne had something come. She had to run and couldn't stay on the phone. But Adam, Marianne from Syracuse, listening on the Station of the Cross, wanted to know what do you think about Harry Potter, and what is your, or I'm sure she would mean the church's position or thoughts on Enneagrams. So a question about Harry Potter and one about Enneagrams.
Well, I think the issue with any media that celebrates magic and makes it seem fun and exciting for kids, the danger in that is that it's normalizing it for the kids. So remember, maybe some of our listeners remember many years ago that you'd watch a movie and everybody would be smoking cigarettes in the movies. All the movie stars would be smoking. And then, that was basically advertising because it was making it seem normal and attractive, and the famous people on the screen are doing it. And then later, as society figured out smoking was bad, now you don't see anybody smoking in movies. So it's not that would make somebody go smoke, but it makes it easier and seem more reasonable later when they have the opportunity to smoke. And I think when we celebrate magic in the media, it's kind of the same thing. It's not going to necessarily cause a problem right away just because you watched a movie or read a book, but you're feeding that into your mind and imagination. And then maybe later in life when you're at college and somebody's playing around with tarot cards or a Ouija board in their dorm room, or somebody's maybe talking about Satanism and how it's okay, maybe, just 5%, maybe 1% more, you might listen. because it's kind of been set up for you as something cool when you were young. And sure, you didn't take it totally seriously when you were young. Sure, it's just a book. But it's setting you up to maybe soften you up that idea might be acceptable. So later when you encounter the real thing, you might dabble in it. So I think that's really the danger there. You know, some people worry about, the rituals in the book are actual real rituals and, you know, the names of the spirits and whatnot. Maybe. So, you know, she is, J.K. Rowling has said that she went and looked up, I've seen interviews at least where she said she looked up old, you know, legitimate folk magic and things and used it to make it accurate in the book. But I wouldn't necessarily worry about that because at the fundamental level, evil spirits couldn't care less about how you wiggle your fingers or draw a circle on the floor or the words that you say. All of that is completely irrelevant to them. All they care about is a free will invitation or request. They don't care how it's done. And in fact, they mock magicians and people involved in black magic during the exorcisms when people have fallen to this kind of type of possession. They actually mock the fact that people think that they can control spirits with these matters. The only thing that's binding on spirits, and we see this, you know, this isn't just for Catholics, this is non-Catholics, this is Satanists that come to us for help. The only thing binding is the apostolic authority that Jesus gave the apostles, passed down to the priest, that will actually force the demon to be obedient, give the information, and then eventually leave. So that, in experience, that's what we see is actually binding. You know, the magic, you don't need to get worked up and too fearful about it because that's basically just games. The evil spirits will pretend to be obedient to that in order to lure you deeper into thinking that you've got them under control and that you're a powerful witch or wizard or whatever. But in reality, they couldn't care less about that. So just focus on not inviting them, period, and not violating the first commandment. And realize that if your kids are really into Harry Potter, you know, I think it's kind of softening them up in the same way that if they watched a lot of movies about drug use, it might soften them up and make drugs seem like a more reasonable choice later in life. The Enneagram, I believe, is a reference to personality types and patterns, I believe is what they're referencing there, which some people are concerned about with it going back to Jung and personality theory and some concerns about Jung and whether he was troubled spiritually. You know, basically personality testing, when it's used by psychologists to help figure somebody out, to find out what job they would be well suited for, this type of thing, which to a large extent grew out of the military and their need to process a lot of people very quickly. Basically, I think if it's done professionally, it's fine. I don't think it's necessarily going to lead to spiritual problems because you're basically just seeking to learn more about yourself. So, yeah, that's basically where I'd fall on that.
What about Ouija boards too, Adam? The same thing. So if you're breaking that first commandment, I mean, is that an invitation with these Ouija boards, or can you just view those as just you know, trivial games?
Well, it's the same thing. It's violating the first commandment. You're basically, what you're doing when you're playing with that is you're inviting a random spirit. So it would be like picking up the phone, dialing a random number, and giving the person that picks up on the other end your Social Security number.
Gotcha.
And your address. And then rolling the dice about what they do with that information. So you're establishing a connection with a random spirit. You're violating the first commandment because you're telling God, you know, I'm motivated to get some spiritual insight here, and I don't trust you. I'm going to turn to this random spirit to comfort me about the afterlife, to put me in touch with my dead relative, to maybe give me power and knowledge about the future. So whether you're using a pendulum or a Ouija board or throwing dice or whatever you're doing to do divination.
Psychic mediums?
Yeah, certainly. And most psychics and mediums are just cold readers and frauds, but some of them are wound up with real deceptive spirits that are feeding information to them. But regardless of whether they're legit or just a charlatan, by you requesting that and opening that door, you're leaving that spiritual door open for a spirit to take advantage of that. Whether it happens there at the parlor, for the psychic, or whether it happens later, you've opened the door and left it hanging open. So, does a Ouija board lead to problems for 100% of the people that use it? Of course not. Tens of thousands of people use them every day. They don't all end up possessed. It generally doesn't lead to possession right away. It leads to infestation, oppression, which can develop into possession over time if the person gives into it. Mm-hmm. But some people, it seems like the evil spirits are more interested in than others. But basically you're rolling the dice, and right. You're breaking the first commandment, you're breaking your friendship with God, and that's just not a good idea, and then you're leaving that door open. And, of course, the follow-up concern everybody will have listening to that is, oh, my gosh, when I was 16, we played with the Ouija board, and I thought about it. Just go to confession. If you're not Catholic, repent sincerely, never do it again. The nonsense about, you can't throw them away because they reappear in your house, those are just folk stories. Just break it in half, throw it away, don't worry about it, and just be done with it.
Mm-hmm. I'm happy you said that, Adam, because that was going to be my follow-up. Say, what can we all do if we did this as children or as teens? So you said go to confession or repent sincerely if you're non-Catholic, and please do that and let it go. Let it be in the past. Okay. So Valerie's up next in Oakland, Michigan, and Valerie's listening on Sirius XM 130. Valerie, thank you for waiting, and welcome to Take Two.
And thank you for taking my call. My question is, I have a 10-year-old grandson who, according to his opinion, everybody in school plays Fortnite, and why shouldn't he be able to play it? So my question for you is, what is your opinion about this Fortnite game, and how do I impress on him why I am, as a Catholic Christian, so opposed to this game?
Yeah, I'm not really an expert on video games. I only vaguely know which game that is. I assume it's basically all the popular games right now in terms of group games like that, I believe, are all fighting and combat games, like competitive stuff and war games and blowing each other up and things like that. It's just not really my area of expertise. I've not seen cases, but again, we deal with the extreme end of things. I've not seen extraordinary demonic cases come out of just video games on their own. Now, from a psych perspective, I would say that possibly, getting too involved in violent games can have an effect on you. But the bigger concern, I would say, from a psych perspective, and I think a lot of parents know this, but a lot don't, is the gaming industry has moved to a model of turning the games into a form of gambling. And so they do these microtransactions where they tell the kids, well, if you buy 10 treasure chests for $1 or $2, you have a 1 in 100 chance of getting this item in the game. And the gaming industry has figured out the kids, because all human beings fall to what's called variable interval reinforcement. And that's what gambling is based on. That's why adults gamble away their lives and are financially destroyed by it, because we're weak when it comes to that type of reinforcement. And so they figured out that they can do this to kids too. And they sell kids these tiny little transactions in these games, and these kids are spending huge amounts of money if they can get their parents to fund it. And then basically that, even if it isn't so much the money, it's starting to train the kid to be a gambling addict, because it's getting them used to the rush of basically pulling the arm on the slot machine figuratively, but they're doing it in a game, and they're basically paying to have this slim chance to get this reward. So you have to be careful about what games they're playing in terms of them basically getting addicted to the game, partly because of these microtransactions, but also just getting addicted to some of the mechanisms built into it. There may not be money involved, but there's kids in a lot of countries around the world that are becoming seriously addicted to video games, where they they have kind of the equivalent of drug programs for kids in some countries, that their lives have been destroyed by that addiction. So I would be careful in that sense, too.
Okay, Valerie?
Thank you very much. God bless you.
All right, God bless you,
You
too.
too.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I have some younger relatives, and I know friends with their kids, and they just say that they're morning, noon, and night. Every spare minute is in front of a screen with a joystick or something like this. And I agree with you, Adam. It concerns me a lot. Just simply because from a standpoint of social skills, and I mean the world is a big bad place out there. We don't have to be worried about it, but we have to be prepared for it. And if we're sitting in front of video monitors all the time, that may not be accomplished. So. Thanks again to Valerie. We have Adam Blai with us on Take Two with Jerry and Debbie today. He is a church-approved and appointed religious demonologist. Adam, in 15 seconds, what's a demonologist?
Well, anytime you see ologist, that means study of. So a religious demonologist specifically would be somebody who knows a lot about the demonic, but from a religious perspective. If you just said demonologist, that person could be interested in because they think they're cool and want to play around with them. But the religious demonologist is somebody who approaches it from usually a Christian or Catholic Christian perspective, and our interest is only in opposing them, not celebrating them, not enjoying them or finding ways to interact with them, but to understand the enemy so that we can more effectively oppose them and help our people oppose them.
Right. And you're also a clinical psychologist too, right, Adam?
Well, no, I have a master's in adult clinical psychology. You have to be really careful. When you use the term clinical psychologist, that's only a licensed psychologist. I'm not, to be clear. That's a controlled title. So I have a master's, and I've worked in psychology in the Pennsylvania prison system under supervision. Master's level therapists can work under a licensed psychologist. They sign off on your reports. So I've got years of experience in it, but not as a full clinical psychologist.
Right. Okay, good. That's good. That helps us all to understand it better. Okay, so Kelly's been waiting in Denver, Colorado on Catholic Radio Network. Hi, Kelly. Welcome with our guest, Adam Blai.
Hi, thank you. My question is, I have two boys, 8 and 6, and of course with Halloween, they want to know if ghosts and haunted houses and stuff like that really exist, because we believe and we've taught them about guardian angels and saints and God, and he protects us from evil, which they know to be the devil. But I don't know what to tell them about the, evil entities that are or aren't on Earth. Do I just tell them that it's evil spirits?
Yeah, they're so young, I guess. I would simplify it for children that young because I think it might be almost traumatic if you got into too much detail about demonic spirits when they're that little, because they may not be able to kind of wrap their head around that, and it might be too scary for them at that age. So I would give them maybe a simplified version now and then fully teach them about it when they're a little older. So I would say, yes, we believe that poor souls, people that need some prayer sometimes appear to people, but that a lot of time haunted houses are just people scaring themselves, working themselves up about it, and maybe just let them know there are also bad spirits out there that trick people. And I would just leave it at bad spirits that trick people. I wouldn't start talking to kids that young about demons because I think it could be overwhelming and traumatic for them.
Adam, Kelly, don't go yet, real quickly. Adam, what about just the story of the fallen angels? I mean, can you get into that in a general sense? Because I know in religious education we used to as early as 3rd and 4th grade.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you can explain that to them. I'm saying, I'm not an expert in parenting, but I'm just thinking kids that young. I think of some of the scary stories and ideas about, kids being tricked and, people being scratched or wounded or things following them home. I wouldn't get too gory in your discussion of what demons do to people and how they trick them. I would just leave it at, there's evil spirits that trick people and they're no good.
Right.
Okay. All right,
Thanks,
take two with
Kelly.
Jerry and Debbie. Thank you, Kelly, for the call. Many, many more of you on the line. Hang on. We're going to get to you. I like to bounce around to social media and to email. You can email questions at take2@EWTN.com. Adam, here's an email. My name is Ezra from North Carolina. This isn't Halloween related. I hope that's okay. I wanted to ask you because I feel it's no accident that on the one day off I have where I can actually catch your show live, I'm worried I'm currently undergoing a spiritual attack and I'm unsure how to combat it. I recently really increased my devotional life, adding hours more to my day-to-day routine, focused on nurturing my relationship with God. Not even a few days after I began, I was hit with a depressive episode. I suffer from bipolar that is normally really well managed, and my episodes are now only triggered by external events. However, after talking with my doctors and therapist, we're all a little baffled because there's nothing we can figure out to be triggering this. He says that I refuse to tap out and let a depressive episode beat me after so many years of work to overcome my bipolar, but this one isn't lessening or going away like the past ones have, so it's been exhausting. Any advice would be greatly appreciated. That's from Ezra in North Carolina, Adam.
Yeah, so of course that's really tough, right, to that's a complicated situation with a very, very real and serious mental health issue involved. So I guess, number one, first and foremost, is keep working with your doctors because bipolar is a real brain chemistry issue, and you don't want to ever stop your treatment thinking, well, this is more spiritual or it's all spiritual, and so I'm going to stop treatment. We see that's a real error with mental illness. So stick with your meds, work with your doctors. You have a responsibility when it comes to these potential spiritual problems. You've got to rule out and treat the mundane. You're not supposed to abandon the mundane and jump to this rare hypothesis that it's spiritual. And a lot of people make that error. They say, well, this feels odd, I don't understand it, so it must be a demon or it must be spiritual, and they may then stop their psych treatment, and then, of course, they get worse. And then if they keep interpreting it as spiritual as opposed to stopping their treatment, they can end up in a really bad place. So the church has always been very cautious about endorsing the spiritual hypothesis because we don't want to do harm to ourselves by neglecting real treatment that we need for a concrete, mundane issue like bipolar. So that would be like the first thing. Now, the spiritual concern, if you're Catholic and you're in a state of grace, you don't have unconfessed mortal sin on you, you're going to Mass at least once a week, it sounds like you have quite a bit of a devotional prayer life already. Basically, you don't need to worry about extraordinary demonic problems. Paul says that the darts of the enemy, thrown at somebody that's right with Jesus, just fall to the ground, and that's true. So are there spiritual trials that God allows along the way? Yes, but not overwhelming, debilitating situations like the extraordinary problems when we're in a state of grace. The only exception, and of course I know people are thinking it, what about Padre Pio getting beat up? What about the Cure of Ars? Yes, with the saints at the extreme of the spiritual journey, they've defeated the flesh, they defeated the world, and now they face the devil unveiled, which of course Jesus mirrors this when he goes in the desert and fasts for 40 days and confronts the devil. That's what the Desert Fathers were about. They defeat the temptation of the flesh and the world, and they go meet the devil, and yes, they experience some suffering there, but it's limited. That's kind of a different special case. When we're just walking through life, we're doing our best, and we're in a state of grace, we don't have to worry about too much interference. Yes, we're still going to be tempted. Yeah, there are going to be trials. But, if it's a depressive episode, that would be more of an extraordinary thing if it were spiritual. And if you're in a state of grace, I wouldn't frame that as spiritual. I would keep looking at more of the psychological there.
That's very practical advice, Adam, and we need to hear that because in this world that it's kind of seems just a little crazy right now, we can kind of get off there. So it's really good that we get emails like that from Ezra. Ezra, I hope that helped you, and it helps all of us too, just to kind of stay sane in what's happening around us, and to be pragmatic with it. So that's good. Adam, we just have a couple more minutes, so we're going to try to squeeze in. We have so many emails coming in and texts and calls coming in, Adam. We're trying to go through them. So we're just going to go to Bridget in Florida on Sirius XM 130. Bridget, we're going to have to go quickly. We just have a few more minutes with Adam Blai. Hi, Bridget.
I raised my kids in a rural area. We chose not to celebrate Halloween. We did All Souls feasts and things like that. Then when our kids grew up 3 years ago, we moved into a subdivision, which is very, very large. On Halloween, we get hundreds and hundreds of kids. The problem is that it's adjacent to Casadega, which is a spiritualist camp, 57 acres with mediums, psychics, the whole gamut. My question is, and I'll make it quick, if those people that live so close to us come over to my house and they carry with them evil spirits, do I have anything to fear coming into my house?
No, because you have authority over your home, and unless you were to accept physical gifts from them and bring it in the home and choose to keep them, that could cause a problem if they were cursed, which means the opposite of blessed. If you were to invite somebody mixed up with that to live in your home and you gave them the right to live there, that could start causing problems mainly in the space that they live in. But if they just knock on the door, no, you don't need to be fearful of that. You have authority over your home and your property. You're not accepting them into your home. They're just knocking at the door. That's fine. You don't need to feel fear about that.
Okay, Bridget?
All right.
Okay. Wish we had more time, Debbie and Autumn and the others. Yeah. Feel free to email us, take2@EWTN.com. We are not the experts. Adam is, but Adam, I'm sure if I recall from the past, you don't have a lot of time on your hands, so answering emails is probably not high on your priority list. In fact, I know you really kind of reserve that time for priests and bishops and those who are inquiring about serious matters that you can help them with. But you do have a website, right, where people could kind of get just some general information about what a religious demonologist is, and you've got a frequently asked questions page there, so give that out for our listeners.
Right. Yeah, that's religiousdemonology.com. It's been there for many years. It's just information for the public. And please know I cannot consult directly on situations outside of our diocese here, because if you're outside this diocese, you're under a different bishop's authority, and I can't get directly involved in your case. That's just the way the church is organized. So the basic information is there for everybody, but if you have specific questions, you need to contact your diocese.
Any big speaking engagements you got coming up that we could all maybe attend? Anything coming up on the horizon?
Not right now. I just got home from a trip, going to a number of places, so my feet are tired. But yeah, I just finished a number of them. I've got nothing coming up. We're just going to work here through and then make it to Christmas. And then there's a big conference in January for exorcists, but that's not available to the public.
All right. Well, anyone listening, if you'd like to bring Adam to your parish for a mission, a local conference, any kind of an event speaking on spiritual matters that we really all need to be, again, aware of but not afraid of. We need to be equipped to fight the good fight. You can do so through thirdmillenniummedia.com, thirdmillenniummedia.com. Adam, thanks so much. Debbie, it's been another informative show with Adam.
Yes, amazing. Sure. Thank you so much, Adam. We really appreciate it. And folks, tomorrow we're talking about who's closest to being a saint for you. That's what we're talking about tomorrow on Take Two. Until then, have a beautiful and blessed day. See you real soon.